Hi, my name is Brandon Levene. I'm the Principal Product Manager for Threat Detection for App Omni. Today we're going to talk about threat detection and really how we use threat detection in identifying SaaS security threats and how it fits into a holistic SaaS security environment. Hopefully you're here for the content and not for me. I'm going to go with, I don't know. But let's go ahead and hop right in because I don't have a lot of time and doing the bio thing is just a pain in the butt. So the rise of SaaS threats. According to Tails, 54% of breaches targeted SaaS apps, cloud-hosted applications. Talos, one of the leading threat intelligence research organizations, an arm of Cisco, made up of former SourceFire, Emerging Threats, and others, some of the best on the market. Snowflake isn't an outlier, it's a canary in the coal mine. Definitively true. Mandiant under Google, UNC 3944, targets SaaS applications. This is what you'd call Scattered Spider, Octo Tempest, et cetera, whatever rubric or Rosetta Stone you choose to use to identify threat actors. Midnight Blizzard, another great example of SaaS, a SaaS-based intrusion that led to some potentially detrimental outcomes. What do these all have in common? SaaS. So the TTPs that we regularly see in the SaaS environment, and if you went to our briefing yesterday or you had access to the briefing yesterday, you would know that the kill chain in SaaS is typically quite abbreviated, meaning we don't have a lot of time or a lot of opportunities to necessarily identify the threats that are coming after SaaS. But why target SaaS as a threat actor? SaaS is all connected. 78% of organizations store sensitive data in SaaS. When I ran a business on my own, all I had was a Chrome browser and SaaS applications. That's becoming increasingly more common that the architecture and the operating system of businesses is SaaS. The traditional network, that legacy perimeter, is disintegrated. But we just haven't come to terms with that and understanding our new attack surface. Credentials are everywhere. Why does that matter? SaaS is really easy to target with credentials. We still don't do a good job with MFA. TOTP and MFA exhaustion attacks work, but most of the time they're unnecessary because there's no MFA applied to a service principal account. And as we've seen credentials, the use of credentials and breaches begetting breaches, we can see that we're getting these compounded impacts. So when Snowflake itself was not compromised. When users of Snowflake were compromised, we all know a number of those victims, and that sucks. But you know how they got in? The threat actor bought a set of credentials specifically for Snowflake and logged in, queried a database, dumped the data, and away they went. These are not sophisticated attacks. These are not complex attacks, but they're working. And why do you bother targeting that? Because business critical information is money. That's cash. You can extort a business for $100,000, $200,000, $300,000, up to $5 million, $6 million. We've seen ransomware payments go up to $75 million in the last week and a half. And a lot of the times, ransomware payments aren't actually part of just being locked and getting and not having access to your data. It's about control of data. But we have some challenges associated with threat detection for SaaS. Apps have radically different logs and telemetry. I don't know how many people in this audience have ever looked at, say, a Workday log versus a Snowflake log versus a Office 365 log versus a Salesforce log. What you will very quickly find is it's not like doing threat detection for Windows or Mac or Linux, where no matter what EDR you have, you generally know exactly how that operating system is doing things. How you execute code. You run DLL, or you execute Python, or you execute a PowerShell script. We don't have those sorts of hallmarks when you're talking about threat detection in SaaS. And one of the key things is that you need to be able to normalize that data, which we'll talk about in a moment. The other part is, like I mentioned with EDR, so people make their entire careers on knowing Windows internals backwards and forwards, or Mac backwards and forwards, or Linux, or God forbid Solaris if anybody still uses it. I don't know if anybody does. I'm sure someone does. But when you have an environment with an average of 150 SaaS applications, you don't have 150 experts available to you for every single SaaS application. People have made their entire careers just being a Salesforce consultant, a Workday consultant, an M365 consultant. There just isn't enough talent and enough expertise available for defenders to be able to just leverage that specialized knowledge. The other thing is, SaaS is an attack surface. And as we add more SaaS to our environments, and this doesn't even account for third-party SaaS applications where you get an OAuth prompt and say, oh yeah, Slack, I'd like to add Jira to my Slack, or yeah, Jira, I'll add GitHub to you, that's cool. Boom, you've now tripled your attack surface. Now I can move from Slack to your production code instance and steal all your code because someone clicked one button. That's terrifying. And finally, there is limited actionable context. You need to understand the underlying state of the application itself in order to be equipped to respond to actual threats that are facing your SaaS and your organization. So there are some specific capabilities that can help address these challenges. Firstly, as I mentioned previously, is log normalization. Taking those disparate log sources and normalizing them into a data model. It should be a very clearly defined data model. It should be well documented. It should be strongly typed. It should be transpilable to various different formats, JSON, JSON-L, protobuf if you're an organization that really likes protobufs. One or two of them actually do. What else? SaaS expertise. There's not a lot of SaaS experts. There are people that know Salesforce in and out. There are people that know O365 in and out. It is exceedingly uncommon that that same person who knows Salesforce is an absolute expert in O365. So you need to be able to find a solution or find a provider that has that SaaS expertise on staff and provides the content to you that really leverages that. You need to be able to perform investigations and enablement. This is a constant ongoing problem in IT security. Who here has been sold to or asked about or talked about, what's your single pane of glass? Raise your hands if you've ever heard that phrase, because I feel like everybody who's ever been a prospect in the sales process has heard single pane of glass. Nobody I've ever spoken to, and I was a security researcher for a decade. Prior to that, I was a SOC analyst. Wants another place or another console to log into to get the information that is essential for them to secure their organization. They want it in an easily accessible, queryable spot, period. So you can do correlations, you can do your own analytics, your own logic, build on top of that expertise that is provided to you, and make it work for your environment. And finally, as I mentioned before, you really need to have posture information about the states of your SaaS applications. Because in many cases, the actual state of the SaaS platform directly contributes to the threats that you are facing. You don't have MFA enabled or applied universally across Okta. Good job. You are now wide open to the internet for anybody with a credential that reuses their credentials for LinkedIn, Netflix, or any other myriad of breaches. Or, God forbid, they're in the ROC-U 2024 list, which is several hundred gigabytes of just credential informations. But why do you combine threat detection and posture, so the proactive and the reactive? So when you're doing only TD, it's really whack-a-mole, right? I don't know how many of you have come from a SOC life or a security analyst life, but typically speaking, you have a billion alerts. You don't really know what to do with them. You take a couple minutes to investigate them, click button, okay, it's an incident, okay, it's not, great. We do a detection, or we maybe improve our detections a little bit, okay, we generate a new alert. But it's an endless cycle. That's a hamster wheel. You're never actually solving for the root of the problem. But when you incorporate posture into threat detection, then you actually have not just context of the application, but you're able to actually address the root cause of the threats of the application. Make that policy change in Okta. Make that configuration change in Office 365. break that chain of the hamster wheel. You eliminate the alerts. And is there anybody in this room that would love to have more alerts to deal with? Yeah, nobody wants more alerts. Nobody. But what we want, and we deserve, and we should demand, is the capability to make more intelligent decisions with the alerts that we have. We have great telemetry, if we look at it. We generally have great signals and alerts if we look at it. But because there's so much, it's very difficult to make a decision. So when you add the context, and not using context as the buzzword that it's sort of evolved into, context in the terms of the statefulness of the application itself at the time of potential threat, then we were able to actually impact the overall security status and net improve our outcomes in the future. We used to live, when I was at Salesforce almost a decade ago, we used to live by the rule of, you should not be popped the same way twice. That's embarrassing. Really good example of this is Midnight Blizzard. Now, let me caveat this by saying that I'm not making the claim that App Omni being deployed at Microsoft would have prevented Midnight Blizzard. This is an Apex threat actor, Russian nation-state threat actor. However, I will throw a small dig at my former employer and say they actually have to monitor the environment that is under threat. That seemed to have been the root cause there. Enough said. But let's talk about Midnight Blizzard. Account had a guessable password with no MFA. Where have we heard this before? Everywhere. The account was likely permitted to modify a legacy test OAuth app. So, okay, you log in with credentials that you can password spray. You now have access to an OAuth app that has massive amounts of privileges, so you privilege escalate. You grant that OAuth app greater privileges. You then become you then escalate to a service principal. You can now create an Enter ID account. You become a service principal for all employee mailboxes. Away you go. But what's the source of this, right? Back up to step one. It's a password spray. That's an incredible ROI from a threat actor, from an Apex nation-state threat actor that you're seeing here from a password spray. I don't know how better to communicate that, how more clearly to communicate that, but just understand that this isn't companies falling victim to sophisticated threat actors. This is a $20 tool and a web server on any VPS or cloud provider. So let's talk about the TTPs. We see a fairly abbreviated kill chain here, which is what we would expect as far as our understanding of how SAS threats typically propagate. Initial access, persistence, defense evasion, lateral movement, and exfiltration. Let's take a look at with what you can cover from TD alone, from a threat detection perspective alone, a purely reactive perspective, looking at audit logs. Did it just get darker in here, or am I having a minor stroke? Okay. I'm more than mildly colorblind, so I'm assuming that this is now filled in some color, different color for what you can cover by threat detection. You get about 50% to 60% coverage from pure threat detection alone. That's great. That's an opportunity to actually even respond to this attack. But we can do better. When you incorporate posture rules and insights into the state of the applications, the underlying applications themselves, we get significantly better coverage. And this is what you need. You need that capability to connect those dots. You need the ability to use both proactive and reactive controls in unison. You cannot have one without the other and have a complete security program. So, TD with posture is context. And this is it provides us a clear picture of what went wrong, but not just what went wrong, but why it went wrong. And the idea is to improve our mitigation efficiency and our effectiveness. We don't have a lot of time to respond to threat actors. We need the ability to have faster remediation. As we've already discussed, we don't need more alerts. In fact, we'd like to reduce our alerts so that we have things that are immediately investigatable, immediately triageable, and immediately respondable. And we need more actionability. And again, kind of a buzzword, but actionability here just means the capability and the ability to make a better decision about with using the information that is available to you. So how does App Omni handle this? Well, we increase context to prioritize our workflows by combining detections with SaaS posture and identity insights. Identity is one of the key anchors for the cloud, for the modern era, right? That is your perimeter. Identity is not just your credentials, your token, your session tokens. It's an asset. Every identity that your organization has is an asset, and they need to be treated as such. And not only are they just assets, you know, my Mac is like $3,000, something like that. The identity of an administrator, which I see one of mine in the room right now, could likely cause tens of millions of dollars of damage. So where do you prioritize? We protect our endpoints pretty well. That's actually something we've done decently in the last couple of years, is increasing our endpoint telemetry. But we've done, frankly, a not great job from the identity front. Then you need to normalize and compensate for delayed and out-of-order log delivery. The SLAs from different task vendors, and there's hundreds of them, are radically different from each other. You can get events that arrive out of order. You can get events that arrive multiple hours delayed. You need a detection engine that compensates for that. You also need to understand what the art of the possible even is for detection. And that's why we have something called the Event Maturity Matrix. Any one of you can open your phone, your laptop after this, and get a really good feel for what is actually possible from a detection standpoint from the Event Maturity Matrix. We've gone ahead and indexed specific event types, highlighted which fields are actually available and which fields are not available. I guarantee you, you will be surprised when you look at the fidelity of logs from some of the critical applications that you use, that certain things are missing or certain things are not even logged at all. That's freely available to everybody. It's open source. Additionally, we work where you work. We integrate with the tools that you already use. You don't need to learn a new query language. You don't need to learn some completely niche format. All you need to understand is the data model. And you can use the tools that you have already invested in, be it Chronicle, CrowdStrike's Next-Gen SIEM, Splunk, what have you. Use the tools that you are already comfortable with. You don't need to retrain your team to use yet more telemetry. The single pane of glass isn't functional. We need that contextual data from, okay, well, if John is on his machine on vacation in Tahiti, but he's actually logging in from Uzbekistan on the SaaS app, that's something we can't do on our own. But we can provide you that telemetry from the SaaS app that you can correlate against your EDR data. And boom, now you have likely an incident, likely a compromised account. And finally, really need to take advantage of SaaS expertise. We have more than 250 fully customizable out-of-the-box detections available from threat detection. And these are just a starting point. These are expertise distilled. And when you think about it, that's really what you expect from content or rules, right? That's basically years of expertise distilled into clearly defined logic. So thank you. I really appreciate your attention. Check us out at booth 1660. It's located right by the snacks. If you want to take your first step to understanding what SaaS logs even look like before you delve deeper into this journey, I highly encourage you to check out the Event Maturity Matrix. And when you go through that, really be cognizant of what these applications that are so critical to your organization are even able to tell you from their logs. And you will be surprised and possibly disappointed in the fidelity of the things that some massive, massive multi-trillion-dollar vendors or multi-billion-dollar vendors actually provide you and enable you to help defend against. Thank you.